All right, it's time for the 2024 Reddit Fantasy Bingo board. And this is my recommendation video and my own personal TBR. It's just a fun challenge. It runs from April until March of the next year. So definitely not too late for you to get started. I'm filming this 4 days into the month of April, so you got some time. And you'll probably be seeing this like within the first week of April. So you got so much time. If you don't know what this is, it's just a bingo board that the fantasy subreddit puts together. It is the fantasy subreddit, but you can read science fiction. Some of the prompts obviously want you to read science fiction. I easily put horror down. If it's speculative, I say it counts. But the goal of the board is to push you outside your comfort zone. That's why, it comes with rules, but obviously it's a reading challenge. Make it fit you. Make it fit what your internal goals are and everything like that. So the idea is unique author per square, barring the short story one, unless you read an entire collection by a short story author. No rereads, or if you're doing a normal mode, I think you get one reread. You don't duplicate books for squares, okay? And there's always a normal mode, a hard mode, and the hero mode is you review all the books. So we will briefly go through things. I'm going to highlight some categories where it's like, I would love recommendations. Please help. Please help. Because some of these are hard. Some of these I feel like I'm just going to have to find in the wild. And I can change out a prompt. I just haven't figured out which one I might want to change out yet. And change it to what? I don't know. So I'll start with the first prompt. It's first in a series. This feels obtainable. Hard mode is the series has to be more than 3 books. So I am putting down the Saint of Steel, which is the first book in the Paladin's Grace series, which currently has 4 books. I don't know if that means it's finished. I don't know if there's more books, but there's currently 4 books. So I think it counts. For you guys, I feel like this is not that hard. I read so many series and there's so many that I like with more than 4 books, but to name a few, Chorus of Dragons. Need I say more? I love that series. We also have The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. You could read Grace of Kings, so you could read Ruin of Kings, or you could read Grace of Kings, sensing a theme here. We also have Terra Ignota, which I just read the first book last month, so Two Like the Lightning. That's a 4-book series. And then Verkosigan. Verkosigan, I think, is a 17-book series. There are many starting points, so first in a series, I think you could argue many separate entry points. I started with Shards of Honor, so you can start there. So that's for that. We have alliterative title. So this is supposed to have, for hard mode, 3 words that start with the same letter, which is nigh impossible. That is so hard. 2 is for the normal mode. So for you guys, the only hard mode one that I could recommend because I've read it is The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. All these A's. So there you go. It's an adventure, time, last job sort of thing. Bring the crew together. It's fun. It's a good time. Ones that I like that only have 2 words are Catfishing on Catnet. I do always love that one. And Blood over Brighthaven. For me, and this is not a stretch because this is how its title is listed in everything. And honestly, I've been meaning to read this for 4 or 5 years. So if it takes it off the TBR, it takes it off the TBR. But this is The Future is Female, 25 Classic Science Fiction and Science Fiction Short Stories by Women. So the whole point is this is early 20th century female short story authors. So I've been meaning to read this for a while. It has 3 Fs. I truly, I was looking at my TBR card. I was looking at the recommendation thread, and I'm like, are there any that I want to read? I couldn't find anything. So if you have a recommendation, feel free to put it down below, but I do have this on my TBR, so I probably could get to it. The next one is Under the Surface, and I forget what specifically the hard mode is, but I think it's primarily that you have to be either underground or in the ocean for the majority of the book. Let me find it real quick. All right, yes. Read a book where an important setting is either underground or underwater. Hard mode, at least half the book takes place underground or underwater. So for me, my pick for myself is going to be potentially The Andromeda Strain. This is a book I've been really wanting to read for a very long time. It's just then the pandemic happened and wasn't really looking for a contagion story. But traditionally, I really like contagion stories. I really like how stressful they are. And I think my impression is that most of this takes place underground in a scientific facility. So I think it counts. I don't know much about this book. I'm pretty sure it's just a virus that ends up killing people, and they don't know why or how, and they're trying to figure out how to handle the situation. He writes science fiction thrillers. I'm sure it'll be a good time. For you guys, novella-wise, The Deep by River Solomon. It is about mermaid people. I mean, they're not called mermaids, but they are about people who live in the water. We spend almost the entire time in water, if not under it. And then one that I think was really debated in the Reddit recommendations list, and like, I guess I didn't count the page time spent in each spot, but I think Our Wives Under the Sea counts. Half of it, I thought, was one perspective that is underwater. Maybe it's not precisely half, but it's a 2 point of view story, and 1 point of view takes place underwater. And I truly didn't keep track if it was equally distributed, but it felt equally distributed. Not my favorite book, because I felt like because it was these two distinct halves that they didn't mesh together well. Like, I liked the underwater half and I liked the above ground half, but I didn't like the dissonance of where they met. That didn't really work for me. Next one is Criminals. And so the official whole word prompts for this is a book in which the main character is a criminal. This could be a thief, assassin, someone who commits mail fraud, etc. And the hard mode is it features a heist. And I recently actually just finished a book that accounts for this, which thank goodness, because I don't like heist books. And this is, it has a very long title. Shiggity and the Brass Hat of Ubalufan. Obalufan? Obalufan. I think it's Obalufan. Because I just listened to the audiobook. Shiggity, god of spirit of nightmares who ends up being hired to be a thief in this story. I think it counts. It's a heist. It was a good time. Review to come in the future. But that's what I chose. But if you want something else, Too Like the Lightning counted for hard mode because of the importance of a heist in the story, even though it's not like a main focus of it. Like, it's a main focus in that what is stolen and why it is stolen and who stole it is really important. But it's not like your traditional thing where like you're watching the heist happen like Ocean's 11. If you want something closer to the Ocean's 11 type of heist, you got classic Mistborn first book, if you haven't read it yet and you're really looking to do so. And then Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. The whole series, honestly, I think almost every book, the first book more clearly has a heist, but I think even the second book has like we have a problem, we have to figure it out. It involves infiltration, that sort of thing. And for sure for Foundry Side, like, the main character's a thief. And then Too Like the Lightning, the main character's a convict. And in Mistborn, they're all considered thieves in their world. So, all right. Hopefully the camera hasn't changed that much because my timer went off. And yeah. Okay, next one's Dreams, which could be really fun. But also, the hard mode's really hard. So this is like dreams that characters have. And they could be magical or otherwise, but the hard mode is they have to just be normal dreams. And, like, I'm sure I've read things like this, but, like, I don't remember because they're not memorable. They're just dreams. Like, there's so many cool dream books, but, like, that don't work for hard mode. Like, if you don't care about hard mode, read The Rook and the Rose. Those dream scenes are some of my favorite. Read The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin and The Shadowed Sun. The dream magic in there, phenomenal. But no, we need mundane dreams. And I guess, apparently, according to the recommendation thread, the Hacienda counts. Couldn't tell you, cannot remember. I'm sure she had nightmares. And I guess if I think about it, if she had nightmares, they weren't mystical. Like, there is supernatural stuff in that book, but it has nothing to do with the dreams. And I love the Hacienda, so read it. It's good. For me, I did write down Cahokia Jazz, which I first heard about when we were looking at the Locus recommended reading list together a couple months ago. What is time? And I guess this takes place early 20th century. It's an alternate city, but like our world, and like the dreams are mundane. I don't know for sure. I'm basing it off the recommendation list. And if you have any recommendations, please give them to me. And the next one's Entitled Animals. So it's like an animal in the title. And like the hard mode is, I find, very unimaginative, basically because of what's been happening in the recommendation list. But it has to be a mystical creature, which means everyone's just finding books with dragon in the title. Which, again, I'm not a dragon girly. I don't dislike dragons. Dragons are fine. But it's just like, ugh. So it's been really hard for me to find things. But for you guys, what I've got, well, we'll start with my dragon pick, A Natural History of Dragons, Memoirs of Lady Trent book, real good. And then I have 2 Yoon-Ha Lee books. I feel like I haven't shouted about Yoon-Ha Lee in a while. One of them's Phoenix Extravagant, so a phoenix. This one is a standalone, non-binary painter character. It's kind of related to Korean invasion by Japan, I believe, in a response to that point in our history. The ending is weird. I just have to warn you, the ending is odd, but I really like the story up till the ending. And then Nine Fox Gambit, because a nine fox is like it's an animal with a nine-tailed fox. Like, I think is basically what it's meant to be. I'm counting it. Nine Fox Gambit is so fun. And also, like I said, this basically just became a dragon square by accident in the recommendation thread. I don't know what I'm going to read for myself because none of the dragon books really spoke to me, and I couldn't really see anything that I really wanted to. And I wanted to use one of the authors who wrote The Kraken for a different thing. So right now, like on my TBR card, I have the wolf. So that might be what I read. Because yeah, it's not an exciting animal, but it's like what I want to read. So I might read it. But also looking for recommendations here. This next one's really hard. I don't even have a recommendation for this next one. I just have what I might read. Maybe this is the square I change out, because I also think this square bothers me, because I think I could have so much fun with this square, but it's like very much not set to like me. And I know part of this is whole to put yourself out of your comfort zone, but this is Bards. Read a book in which the primary protagonist is a bard, musician, poet, or storyteller. And then hard mode is that it's explicitly called a bard, which I just feels like it makes you so narrow. It makes it so like Western storytelling driven, because like a bard is just such a classic archetype trope of those stories that I don't typically read. And like I read so many books with storytellers and none of them count for hard mode because they're not called bards. It's just annoying. Anyways, I don't have a recommendation for this. But for me, I hear The River Enchanted counts. So I will try that one out, potentially, if I do not switch this square out entirely, because like, I mean, I like bards. I played a bard in D&D. Like, that's fun. I don't like how restrictive it is, because it feels so tied to like the already oversaturated part of like sword and sorcery fantasy for me. And the part that I also just happen to find least interesting. So I'm just like also extra grumpy old lady about it. Next up, we have prologues and epilogues. I feel like you don't need my help to find these, but if you so did, Stormlight Archives, The Burning Kingdoms, Venko, The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, and Bride. All of these have epilogues and prologues, which is the hard mode. The easy mode is just have one of them. We're reading fantasy. This is not something that's particularly hard. I'm assuming that because the other Burning Kingdoms books have had prologues and epilogues, that there will be one in the Lotus Empire. So that's tentatively my book for this spot, but I'm also not expecting it to be too hard to fill this one. Next one is the one that is always hardest for me to do, but I always try, and that is the self-published or indie publisher. And this year, I'm going to read Bitter Medicine, because it's on my TBR card, and it's by Tachyon, who has done an Ask Me Anything, which is the hard mode. The other hard mode is like, it has to have less than 100 ratings, and I just find that really difficult. And I don't know, it's just really difficult. I've done it a few times, but that one's really hard for me. So I tend to focus on the indie publisher side of this square. So yeah, that's my recommendation to you as well. Tachyon as a publisher. I think they also did a Marie Brendan I really like, if I'm remembering right. If so, I will have the image on the screen. But Bitter Medicine, I think, is fun, so that's what I'm going to try out. And the next one's Romantasy, and the hard mode was that it needs to be LGBTQ. Strange and Stubborn Endurance is my pick for this, and Winter's Orbit. I like Strange and Stubborn Endurance more than Winter's Orbit, but both of those and their series count. Winter's Orbit is Marriage of... actually, they're both Marriage of Convenience, now that I think about it. Man, they have a lot of overlap. I really wasn't thinking about that. Strange and Stubborn Endurance, I like more, even though it starts from a very harsh place of trauma. Chapter 2 has, like, on-page sexual assault. So, if you don't want that, skip chapter 2, because there will be context clues. You will know what happened fairly quickly if you really don't want to see that on page, but then all of it is, you know, being true to yourself, healing, growing, learning consent, learning communication. It's really lovely. I really love the rest of that book. But I know the beginning can be a turnoff for some people. The one for me that seemed to count based off recommendations is Witchmark by C.L. Polk. And I've been wanting to read another C.L. Polk. I've been wanting to read this trilogy for a while. So here we go. I think it's a trilogy. Regardless, I'll be reading the first book. All right, Dark Academia, which is one where I have many recommendations for you. And like, I found one that I might be interested in. So again, if you have recommendations for hard mode, and hard mode is that the school itself is mundane. And the definition for Dark Academia for this prot is just aesthetics. So just vibes. But it must be speculative. So like, what's it called? Secret History or something like that? I don't know. It's one that Ryan read and had a review on the channel, and I don't have plans to read it anyways. That's too mundane. Can't go there. My recommendations, Ninth House and Hellbent. I enjoy those. I know not everyone does. I personally don't get the Dark Academia aesthetic, but the internet tells me that it is, so go for it. Summer Suns. This is a nice gothic southern horror. The school itself, very mundane. Middle Game by Shauna McGuire, a lot of people seem to think counts, and there is a lot of time spent on school grounds. The schools are all mundane. So there you go. For me, apparently, my options are Bunny, which is a book I never really thought about reading. I never thought about not reading it either. I just didn't think I was a girly who would read Bunny. I don't know. I just don't feel like I make that aesthetic. I mean, I have nothing against it. We'll see if it works. I've not read any Mona Awad. No sense on if this would work for me. All right. The next one's multi-POV. I don't think you need my help here. I didn't even write a book down for myself. I think I'm currently reading a book that already has 4 POVs, and I'm sure it'll get a 5th one, because that's the hard mode, have 5 or more POVs. The Jasmine Throne counts. It's Burning Kingdoms year. I'm really pushing it because I want people to read the Burning Kingdoms. Goliath by Tochi Onibuchi also counts, has so many POVs, but like literally, Stormlight counts, Malazan counts, Wheel of Time counts, like so many things count. Like pick a fantasy book. You'll find it. Go through my should you reads. If you really need some inspiration, I got some there. Published in 2024, and it needs to be a debut, I have an Arc of the West Passage. So this is also my recommendation to you. I don't know anything about it. It looked really pretty, and it came with illustrations, so I asked for it. And I'm hoping I like it, and it comes out in July. So, here it is. I can't remember if it's Indian or South Asian inspired, but it looks very cool, and I'm excited to try it. All right, next one is a character with a disability, and the hard mode is that they are a main character. For myself, and I guess it's also a recommendation, I'm going to read another Verkosigan book that's with Miles. Specifically, Miles Verkosigan has a disability. So, any Miles book, and I'm sure I'll read another Miles book at some point this year. But for you guys, if that isn't your jam, you don't want to read that sci-fi adventure because you don't want to have a good time, we have Spear Cuts Through Water, which is a fantastic fantasy time. One of the main characters does not have an arm. So, counts for that. The Unbroken, one of the main characters has a disability. Same with The Faithless, so Unbroken or The Faithless. And then, I wrote down The Broken Kingdom. Yes, The Broken Kingdom. I just read. For a second, I was thinking of The Burning Kingdoms because all of these names blend together for me. The Broken Kingdom, the main character, Ori, she's a blind street artist. So, got some options there. There also, the recommendation list in the subreddit for that is vast. So feel free to peruse. Next one is published in the 90s, and the hard mode is the author is still publishing today. And I guess I have 2 author options for me, and I don't know which one I'll pick, and I don't know which book. Everyone's been reading Mercedes Lackey lately. I probably should try her out. I don't know where, I don't know how. I should probably give her a shot. And then also from the sci-fi end, and I feel like I put him on my list last year, is Kim Stanley Robinson. I haven't read anything, and I know they're still publishing. So I got a fantasy and I got a science fiction. We'll see what happens. For you guys, if you've been looking for a push to start Malazan, that technically counts. Gardens of the Moon specifically, published in 99. Sabriel by Garth Nix, he's still publishing. That came out in the 90s. And then The Golden Compass and The Subtle Knife by Philip Pullman. Those came out in the 90s. I don't love Sabriel that much, or that series, but I adore his Dark Materials. So, highly recommend that. But I don't really have a lot of 90s fantasy or science fiction opinions on the whole. Yeah. All right. Orcs, Trolls, and Goblins, oh my, and I believe the hard mode is its main character. So, Legends and Lattes has a main character who's an orc. I'm sure you haven't heard of that book at all. Hasn't crossed your mind. And it's prequel. You could read that. One that I DNF'd but definitely counts is The Unspoken Name. Orc main character. I put the Goblin Empire down for me, or Goblin Emperor. I've never read it. I've heard really great things, so maybe this is the push I need. But if you have other recommendations for this, especially like if you have like a fantasy romance that you think I would like, put it down below. I feel like there are some, but like I couldn't think of any when I was putting these together. Next one is a space opera, and I forget, the hard mode for this space opera was like a little bit long-winded. Read a sci-fi book that features a large cast of characters and has a focus on social dynamics which may be political or personal in nature, set primarily in space or on spaceships. Hard mode written by an author of marginalized gender identity, so woman, trans person, non-binary person. And for me, I put down Translation State by Anne Leckie. Is that her name? Their name? I don't even know their gender representation. But regardless, it works for hard mode. See, Anne Leckie. And I do not know their gender. So we'll just say they, just to cover bases there. But yeah, this counts. It's a space opera. Lots of time in space. Lots of time on spaceships. Traveling between things. Lots of political implications. A treaty is being signed. Sometimes. Review to come. for my thoughts on that one, because I was reading that for a different project, but it happened to work for this square. Next up, we have Author of Color, and you have to have read for hard mode their debut, and the debut would have had to have come out in the last 5 years, I believe. So for me, currently on my shelf that I bought recently, I have Womb City, and this would count. It's their debut novel that's just coming out this year, and it's an Author of Color. So I'm going to work on that. I'm also reading The Water Outlaws right now, which would also count. This one I don't think is that hard for me to do. But for you guys, The Space Between Worlds would count. That's still Within the Window by Micaiah Johnson, and I love that book. So if you need one, that's a science fiction that would count for this. We have a survival square, and I'm excited that this was mentioned in the recommendations, whether this counts or not. And I think survival, the hard mode is just that you have to be surviving from something that is not a super virus or a pandemic. So put a drama strain earlier. See, smart. But Chain Gang All-Stars, apparently, is about survival, which I think makes sense. It's these people surviving in this prison system, and I don't know a lot about the book itself other than I want to read it. But it was on the recommendation list, so I didn't need to be told twice. And then for you guys, I've got The Past is Red, which is it's just surviving in a world where people live on trash, and I really love Tetley. It's great. And then I have Light from Uncommon Stars, which is about Katrina surviving running away from home. And they both counted on the recommendation sheet, and I love both those books. So here's me recommending them. We're skipping the next one because it's judge a book by its cover, and you're literally not supposed to know stuff about the book. You're supposed to pick it because the cover's pretty. So I'm going to just have to go to the library one day and pick a book, because I think all the books that I own I at least know a little bit about before I buy them. So we'll see what happens there. Set in a small town, and then the hard mode is that the town can be fictitious, but it must take place in our world, not a secondary world. And the recommendation sheet said The Woods All Black by Lee Mandello counts. And yes, I would like to read that this year. So easy, on the list. My recommendation would be Lone Woman by Victor LaValle. It's very good. It's very good. I really like that book. Short stories. The hard mode's just reading a collection or anthology. I do this every year. My recommendation is New Sons 2, of course, because I love that anthology. But really, just, pick up anything that brings you joy. And I have short story anthologies and collection videos every year. So if you want to know, I have like 3 or 4 videos for that. I'll link one of them below or something, and then they all link to each other somewhere in there. So if you want a collection, you can find collections. If you want an anthology, you can find an anthology. Have at it. It's a fun time. So I guess, New Sons 2 is the anthology I'd recommend. And then right now, the short story collection I would recommend is The Paper Menagerie, which is such a basic pick, but it's very good. So what do you want? Next one is Eldr Creatures. This is another one where I will take recommendations. The website, the Reddit recommendations said Perdido Street Station would count. So maybe I'll try that. I've been wanting to read one of his books for a while. I wanted to know if No Gods, No Monsters, is that what it's called? I wanted to know if that one would count. And some people think it would, and some people think it wouldn't, because I've been wanting to read that book. The tricky part is this isn't supposed to be Cthulhu-based, and a lot of them are Cthulhu-inspired. My recommendations for you, Winnowing Flame, I think would kind of count. And then Strange Beasts of China, I saw other people arguing would count. And you know what? I kind of agree, and I love Strange Beasts of China, so read it. It's good. Reference materials, this felt a lot like prologues and epilogues, where it's just it's a fantasy book or a science fiction book. Chorus of Dragons, Malazan, Stormlight Archives, Cosmere in general, they all have multiple forms of reference materials. You can pick any of those. I don't think it's that hard. For me, I'm just picking Stormlight 5. That comes out later this year. Yeah, that's just what I'm going to pick for that. And in the last square, I might switch out Bards because it's a struggle bus for me, unless you guys find me a recommendation I really like. But we have book club or read-along book. In the hard modes, you have to be a part of the discussion as it happens, and I'm just really bad at timing my life that way. I'm not bad at reading a book that they end up reading throughout the year. That happens naturally for the most part. I might try, as they start ramping up their Hugo reading clubs, maybe I can sneak in on one of those, but tentatively, we'll slot in a Hugo book for that and see if I get lucky. But that's this Reddit list, and hopefully it came out okay. I'm a little sick right now, so God knows what editing these had to do to get this together between me blowing my nose every so often. But thanks for staying with me. I hope you enjoyed the recommendations. Feel free to leave recommendations down below or come join me on the Discord. I will also link the Reddit announcement, which in the announcement has different interactive sheets you can use, whichever one you choose. I don't think the sheet I used in the past is currently available, but there's other fun ones that are there for you to track your progress. If you just want to leave an emoji, just let me know here. Leave the calendar emoji, right? This is like, calendar moment of the year. I have no clue. I truly am struggling to think of an emoji that makes sense for this video. But leave an emoji of your choice or the calendar one. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.